A flight with Venezuelan migrants who had been detained at the Guantánamo naval base arrived on Thursday evening at Caracas International Airport as part of the return to the homeland plan. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu ordered a massive raid against the West Bank after the earlier blast of 3 empty buses in Bat Yam City. And France withdrew from its only military base in the Ivory Coast. Hello and welcome to From the South. My name is Belén de los Santos. I'm from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. A flight with Venezuelan migrants who had been detained at the Guantánamo naval base arrived on Thursday evening at Caracas International Airport as part of the return to the homeland plan. The group was welcomed by a delegation of high government officials headed by Venezuelan Minister of the Interior Diosdado Cabello. Earlier on Thursday, President Nicolás Maduro asserted that the Bolivarian Revolution was the only one which guaranteed the safe return of Venezuelan migrants to their homeland and accused the far-right opposition of manipulating public opinion about a migration that they themselves had provoked.
Ahorita me dicen que ya viene de regreso.
I am now being told that the plane is on its way back from Honduras at the direct request of the Venezuelan government to the United States government. With 177 new migrants that we have rescued from Guantánamo, the naval base that the United States has in Cuban territory. 177 boys that we rescued there under the return to the homeland plan.
And in this context, the Venezuelan president also affirmed that the criminal group El Tren de Aragua is now extinct in the country and urged his U.S. counterpart to investigate the truth about this criminal organization.
If anything can be said about the terrorism of the Tren of Aragua, the extinct Tren of Aragua, it is that they wanted to attack the cities of the country with terrorism, and we prevented it with intelligence, with action. President Trump asked for those reports so that you can see, I say this with sincerity and respect, so that you can see the truth about the infamous Tren of Aragua. Our migrants are not criminals. They are not bad people. They were people who migrated as a result of the sanctions. They are good people. They are working people. And in Venezuela, we welcome them as a productive force, with a loving embrace. Welcome back to the homeland. A family reunion. Welcome everyone.
And more on the migration crisis. Mass deportations from the United States are a reality in El Salvador. However, the government has not revealed any plan to deal with an eventual mass return of migrants. From San Salvador, our correspondent Roberto Hugo Presa with the details.
As every week, planes from the United States arrive at Monsignor Romero Airport full of deportees. There are officially no figures, but it is certain that deportations will increase in the coming weeks without any state plan for returnees being known.
El Salvador has 210,000 deportation orders for Salvadoran citizens who are living in the United States with or without residency. We also have a considerable number of Salvadorans who are requesting asylum and have an appointment in court, and when they get to court they are going to be told no.
This implies that the profile of deportees coming in the coming weeks is different from the traditional ones, warn migration experts.
They may be older people with chronic illnesses, people who have lived 30, 40 years in the United States, who have never settled their situation and who are already accustomed to a reality different from that of El Salvador. Therefore, the impact which they are going to have on this reintegration process is extremely complicated.
In the face of this bleak outlook, organizations working on behalf of returnees are doing their part. The Integration Center for Migrant Workers, for example, runs support programs that include psychological help, training, community organization, and seed capital for entrepreneurship.
And many families that we have supported have improved their basic basket of goods, their access to basic services. So, we see that they even have the possibility of some, so to speak, some leisure activities. So, this has improved at different levels, not only at an economic level, but also at a psychosocial level for families and communities.
Iris is one of the beneficiaries and says she would not attempt to risk her life and the lives of her children once again on the so-called death route.
Because what we went through was not easy and, as I said, I almost lost my son's life, and if we had a second chance, I don't think I would waste it like that, with ups and downs. But as I said, I have my business. I am with my children, and I know we can get ahead here.
Although no mass deportations have been officially registered so far, U.S. immigration authorities have reported dozens of arrests of Salvadorans, who will sooner or later be repatriated.
Roberto Hugo Presa, teleSUR, El Salvador.
And on a related note, Colombia's President Gustavo Petro called on his compatriots to unite against U.S. foreign policy on immigrant deportations. During his speech at the Governors' Summit in Boyacá in East Central Colombia, Petro criticized the submissive attitude of some compatriots towards Washington's interests, as shown in the recent incident in which the Colombian government turned back 2 U.S. military planes that were trying to land with dozens of deported Colombians, many of them in chains. This action, which provoked a brief diplomatic friction between the two countries, generated criticism in the Colombian press and among the country's richest sectors, which he accused of being accustomed to kneeling before U.S. policy. Petro added further that it was necessary to defend the nation and that kneeling is not the way to do it. The United States government decided on Thursday to revoke the immigration benefit known as TPS, which grants temporary protected status to more than 500,000 Haitians in the country. The Secretary of the Homeland Security, Christine Noem, announced the decision to revoke the extension that ex-President Joe Biden had given to Haitians, arguing that for decades the benefit had been abused. Consequently, TPS for Haiti will expire on August 3rd, leaving more than 520,000 Haitian migrants without a legal status and therefore vulnerable to deportation. It is important to know that TPS is a program established by Congress that grants residency and work permits to foreign nationals who cannot safely return to their country. So, with this benefit, people can live and work legally in the U.S. without the risk of deportation. And now we have a short break coming up, but first, remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. We continue with more information. In Argentina, on Thursday, the Senate approved the bill promoted by President Javier Milei that suspends the primary, open, simultaneous, and compulsory elections, also known as PASO, in the run-up to the legislative elections of next October. The project to eliminate the PASO elections was presented by Javier Milei with the argument that these primary elections, in which the vote of the citizens is obligatory, are costly and in reality are useless because most of the candidacies are already defined beforehand and there are practically no internal elections in the parties. The initiative was endorsed with 43 votes in favor, 20 against, and 6 abstentions, becoming a law, and it only needs the promulgation of President Milei to enter into force. Other sectors call this as a turn against democracy. And in Bolivia, former President Evo Morales announced his presidential candidacy for the Frente para la Victoria party. Morales will run in the general elections of August 17th for the FPV party. The agreement signed between the former president and leader of the FPB establishes Morales as the only candidate for the presidency and that he will focus on resolving justice and economic issues in the country. However, the Supreme Electoral Court announced a few days ago that the FPB party might not participate in the general elections due to alleged irregularities in the election of its board of directors. And Lula da Silva's government expanded delivery of free medicines from the Popular Pharmacy, a program that benefits 24 million people in Brazil. Our correspondents tell us more.
41 medicines for the control of blood pressure, asthma, diabetes, among other pathologies, will be available to all inhabitants of Brazil 100% free of charge. The initiative benefits approximately 1 million people per year who are still paying co-participation to acquire the products.
For example, losartana is a drug for which you will pay a little less than $1, but there are patients who take 2 tablets, which is double the price. That's $20 in the pocket of the customer who uses it for a year. Customers buy not only losartana, but also other medicines, so the monthly bill of a customer who buys from a Popular Pharmacy can be a little less than $10.
The Popular Pharmacies program was created in Lula da Silva's first term in 2004 and foresaw the opening of state-run delivery points. But this initiative was cancelled after the coup against Dilma Rousseff, when Michel Temer restricted the program only to the delivery of medicines in private pharmacies with a reduction in free medicines. The Bolsonaro government then cut 59% of the program's budget.
We had more than 24 million people benefited in 2024, and we will increase that reach even more. Mainly in the most remote areas of the country where there are more difficulties of access. And I must tell you that this program was practically destroyed in the previous government.
The program will reach all Brazilian municipalities with the opening of registration in more than 700 cities that did not already have the Popular Pharmacy program. It will also include nappies for the elderly in view of studies that revealed the demographic aging of Brazil's population.
That causes a huge cost of living, it increases impoverishment, people need more consultations, more examinations, remedies all their lives, so it is very important, as it is in our constitution, our unique health system, the SUS, seeks to treat the different in an unequal way to try to equalize them. So we understand that chronic diseases should have more support from the state.
The actions in the Popular Pharmacy program may be the last major action in the mandate of Nigia Trindade, who could leave office in the next few hours as part of a ministerial reform that seeks to leave behind the post-Bolsonaro reconstruction stage. For a second half of the mandate with transcendental projects that will leave marks of the government.
Now we have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at teleSUR English, there you will be able to rewatch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. We continue with more information in the case in the Middle East. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu ordered a massive raid against the West Bank, justifying this genocidal offensive by the earlier blast of 3 empty buses in Bat Yam city near Tel Aviv, capital of Israel. Israel decided to tighten up the military Iron Wall operation, which occupation forces had launched since January against the West Bank. The Prime Minister made such decision following a meeting he held with both the police and the intelligence Shin Bet agency. Likewise, human rights organizations recall that since January, Israel has expelled over 45,000 Palestinians from this territory. So they fear that the Israeli government used this explosion, which there is no conclusive evidence yet, to keep up its military intervention. And Israeli authorities claim that one of the 4 bodies returned from Gaza was not one of the captives to be handed over by Hamas. The Israeli army said early Friday morning that it has completed the process of identifying 3 of the bodies of the hostages handed over earlier that day by the Islamic Resistance Movement, Hamas, and they said that one of them does not match. The announcement comes at a fragile time for the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, which began on January 19th. And which has been marked by a series of Israeli violations. And now this alleged discovery has caused Israel to announce restrictions on the Palestinian movement and closure in parts of the West Bank as part of its security operations in the area. In other news, the summit of Arab countries to work out a coordinated response to the White House plans for Gaza has begun in Riyadh, the capital of Saudi Arabia. The member countries of the Gulf Cooperation Council, plus Egypt and Jordan, agreed to reject the U.S. president's plan. With this agenda, the representatives of the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Kuwait, Oman, and Bahrain, the host country Saudi Arabia, and the 2 countries that are not part of this coalition are holding this meeting, which they have defined as a fraternal meeting. For experts, however, it is one of the most important meetings in recent times and represents an unprecedented historical turning point. And in a ceremony marked by the raising of the Ivory Coast flag, France has withdrawn from its only military base in the African country. Parisian troops had occupied the military base at Port Bouet near the capital Abidjan since 1978. Tenebirhima Ouattara, Ivory Coast defense minister, said that this act marked a new stage in relations between the 2 nations, while his French counterpart Sébastien Lecornu described the act as a historic event and acknowledged that changes must also take place in military relations. French troops, who have a long and dark history in West Africa, have been expelled from several countries in the sub-region. We go now to Germany, as the Union Party, the center-right force leading German election polls, has lost 2 percentage points in the last few hours. By contrast, the far-right Alternative for Germany has risen slightly to 21% of the vote. Germany is on edge. Less than 72 hours before the early elections, there is already talk of pacts. The aim is to strengthen the cordon sanitaire in order to prevent the advance of the far right, which is only 7 points behind the center right, which currently has 28% of support. The Social Democrats, currently in government, have been hit hard by the performance of Chancellor Olaf Scholz and remain at a modest 16%, as the socialists of the left could cross the 5% threshold. While more than a quarter of the votes, 27%, remains to this point undecided. We now move on to other topics. In September of 2021, one of the largest wildfires in Spain occurred in Sierra Bermeja. A study now shows that this forest fire could increase the floodable area in western Costa del Sol by up to 300% in case of possible droughts or any other high-intensity event. Let's see more.
Pablo camina sobre la cuenca del río Castor.
Pablo walks over the Beaver River Basin, an area of high flooding at its mouth but which may be increased due to the destruction of the mountain range after a fire in 2021.
Flood-prone land is marked topographically and orthographically, the negligence of the administrations in allowing houses to be built so close to flood-prone areas. Not only happens here but perhaps in all the coastal areas, because the soil of the coast is very exquisite, it's very greedy, isn't it?
Sierra Bermeja es un parque natural.
Sierra Bermeja is a natural park that was the target of a sixth-generation fire in 2021, an extreme phenomenon that devastated more than 8,400 hectares of this Mediterranean forest.
Parece que son incendios que cogen una gran virulencia, ¿no?
It is not only from here that it seems to be a fire that is taking on a great virulence. There are several causes. Global warming, the average rise in temperatures, water shortages, but also factors that are attributable to human causes are undoubtedly contributing factors.
El calor, el viento y el fenómeno extremo propagaron el
Heat,
fuego.
wind, and extreme phenomena spread the fire despite the work of nearly 6,000 troops and more than 200 aerial resources. One of the worst fires in the history of Spain occurred in Sierra Bermeja. Now, however, scientists are warning that the effects of possible tears or major floods could radically affect the populations adjacent to this mountain range.
Ahora, un estudio realizado por el Departamento de Geografía de la Universidad.
Now a study by the Geography Department of the University of Malaga, the Sierra Bermeja fire in 2021 could increase by up to 300% the floodable area in areas of the western Costa del Sol in case of possible droughts.
There is another series of problems, such as the increase in the speed of the flows, which makes them more dangerous, or the increase in shear stress. All of this has been measured and specific numbers have been drawn up to show that shear stress increases, which is the capacity of the flow to erode or cause damage to infrastructure, for example.
Experts warn that the extreme events we are facing are a consequence of climate change, and the authorities in action to curb the climate crisis.
Sergio Rodrigo y Francis González, teleSUR, Andalucía, España.
And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and also on TikTok. For TeleSUR English, my name is Belén de los Santos. Thank you for watching.